What's up, everybody? Hello, YouTube. Welcome into another YouTube Live. Just looking at this background. It's a little crooked. It's a little off. I apologize for that. As you can tell, dressed up very nice for the occasion tonight. Got a live show. Might as well dress the part. In reality, I just came from an event, so I'm scrambling a little bit. But, you know, you guys get nice dressed up, done up, gussied up John here. And not just the T-shirt. I remember having that conversation with someone a while back. Like, I like to just rock the T-shirt. I like to just chill in the T-shirt on the YouTube live shows here. Just a generic plain tee. I think they look good, but man, now I've got the sweater. I've got like a little pattern going on the shirt here. I don't know what you guys are going to do with this tonight, but what we have is some football. Obviously, what's happening in Week 9 in the Big 12. I feel like at this point, it's like a who's healthy, like who is the healthiest team in the league. That's probably going to be the team that wins. Who's the healthiest team in a given matchup? That's probably going to be the team that wins. But beyond that, there's a lot on the TV contract that has come out here. It always seems to happen. It's like Wednesdays that this podcast drops with Andrew Marchand from the New York Post. And I believe it's John Oran, who is from the Sports Business Journal. Yeah, John Oran from the Sports Business Journal. They do a podcast together. And they really are the authority on what's happening in the industry as far as these things go. And their podcast that has dropped today has news that would not be quite as kind to the Big 12 TV contract as what they were saying last week in terms of what that dollar figure might be. So that's not great. I suppose if you are somebody that just wants some action and you want something to get done here, it does sound like, they continue to push that this thing is going to get done, that the Big 12 is close to getting this TV deal done with Fox and ESPN, and that the Pac-12 is not so much in that sphere right now. So it is all very interesting. We'll break it all down. Plus, I listened to a 20-minute press conference today that Brett Yormark had. He was on campus in Orlando at UCF. And there was one thing and one word in particular that really stood out to me from his press conference today that he dropped on everybody. So I thought that was pretty fascinating and worthy of a discussion. So today's chat, depending on where you guys want to take it, at least my outline, my roadmap for right now is going to be a little more geared toward the off-the-field stuff, realignment-based TV contract, what's going on with the Big 12 there and what all it means. But you guys know the deal. If you've been here before, you can absolutely control where this chat is going. And that is by doing what Zach and Calico Willie have done, and that is by donating. So we've got over 100 people in the chat right now. It'll be pretty crazy. I can't keep up with everything that's in there, but if you want to make sure that your voice is heard and you get your question or comment on the chat, you do so by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you get in touch with me. It'll pin it up at the top. It'll supersede everything else in the chat, ensures that it will get read here tonight by me, and it supports the work that I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content every single week here on the channel. So it is always much appreciated, those of you who are able to donate. If you cannot, one thing you can do for free that helps support the channel that is just as much appreciated is clicking that like button. You click that like button right now, helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, helps drive the views up, and it is free. Just one click. It'll burn a calorie, get a little workout in, get a step in maybe. I don't know if that really is going to count as a step, but don't hold me to that. I'm no doctor, but it's free. I know that, and it helps me out. So I'd appreciate that as well. We're going to get going with these donations here in just a moment. I will also throw this out here. If you are watching this after the fact, you're not catching it live, which I understand. Not everybody can catch it live. You can support the channel as well on my Venmo. It's just John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to donate there as well. So plenty of ways that you can support what I'm doing here. Support yourself, getting more Big 12 content. I can't do it without the support of all of you guys. So I genuinely do appreciate it, this great community that we have here. And with that, let's go. What do you say? Okay, here we go. Zach, what's up, Zach? Zach says, "Dear sir, please give us all your expert thoughts and predictions for this Saturday's future Big 12 Classic rivalry game of Cincy versus UCF." Yeah, I'm stoked for this game. I was doing a little bit of looking at the schedule earlier today. I was putting together some notes for this, and I did jot down some thoughts. First of all, little intrigued at the line here, Zach. UCF -1. Now, I realize the game's at the Bounce House, okay, and I know like Yormark in town, so things are hopping. Lots going on in Orlando. This is a huge game in the American standings, right? Because if you're a UCF and you're wanting to get back into the title race there, you can hand Cincy their first loss and avenge your loss last week. And that's really my thought here. the game being at the bounce house, I'm sure, is a big part of this, but I think situationally, this has to be a lot about, well, UCF just took it on the chin last week, losing by multiple scores to East Carolina, not traditionally a really strong team, at least recently for East Carolina. But they are much better this year. I don't mean that to be any disparaging. I know East Carolina has significantly improved this year, but still, I think UCF was a little bit shocked by that loss. So now can you bounce back in this spot? And I would guess that the idea here is they're at home, they're focused, and Cincy has been just skirting by. Cincy has been just getting by. The last 3 weeks, SMU, South Florida, Tulsa, not great teams, and they've been kind of ugly wins. So that, to me, I guess, makes up what the line is there. Having said that, I'm still a little bit surprised by that. I'm still a little bit surprised. I'm inclined to think like Cincinnati, battle-tested team. There's still a lot of remnants from last year's team, even if they lost a bunch of the high-end talent like Desmond Ridder, obviously, and Sauce Gardner, for sure. So that's my gut. But Zach, you watch the AAC much more closely than I do. I will just be honest. It's beyond my bandwidth to be able to watch a ton of AAC football. I keep tabs, obviously, on the teams that are coming in here in the league. So I can't give you like a X and O breakdown, but I can give you like my 50,000 foot view on it. I am surprised by that line, even though I understand, I think situationally where Vegas is going with that and why UCF would be a slight favorite. If you're asking me from my gut, my slight lean would be to go Cincinnati there. Now, UCF, Space Mafia, is that what it is? We got the Cactus Mafia for Texas Tech. Space Mafia. I don't need the Space Mafia coming after me. Again, I say that without a ton of knowledge about like how these two teams actually do match up. But I will say this much. Very excited to see how that game plays out. And I will, if I can't watch it live, which Saturday is going to be a busy one. I'm going to Manhattan. Shout out to, I believe it was Ron, who is typically on the channel here. He gave me some awesome tickets to the game. Or is it Dawn? Maybe it's Dawn. Let me check my Twitter DMs because I got some awesome tickets gifted to me for the K-State Oklahoma State game at 2:30. It is Don. My guy Don hooked me up with some great tickets. So I'm going to be there. It's homecoming. I'm going to a little shindig at the old fraternity on Friday. So I'm going to be spending the weekend in Manhattan. So I may not have much time, I guess, is the long and short of it here, to watch a bunch of other games on Saturday. But I will definitely try to watch a highlight cut up of that. The extended highlights that go on YouTube, people doing God's work by putting those up there. I will definitely try to get to that because I am very intrigued by that game. And it will be a tremendous Big 12 rivalry for sure. And I also, shout out to UCF once again. I mentioned it, and hopefully we'll get to it in the live, but they did a really nice job, I thought, with the press conference. Some interesting questions asked to Brett Yormark today when he was on campus there, as he continues to make his little trek around all the current and future Big 12 schools. So those are my thoughts. That's what I got for you, Zach. That's what I got for you. But appreciate you always being here, and appreciate you always promptly getting us rolling, my friend. Good luck to the Bearcats. Good luck to the Bearcats this weekend. Calico Willie, what's up, Calico? My guy, thank you for the support. Thank you for the donation. Calico Willie says, "Hey, John, I missed Sunday because I needed some time to reflect. 2 thoughts. Will was lights out during the first half. And why didn't Colin watch the OSU blunder? He should have kept the foot on the gas." Yeah. Calico, I will say this much. Let me start by saying this. I'm feeling a little better. Feeling a little better about the injury situation. Not quite as down in the dumps as I was last time I talked to you guys on Sunday. Coming back around a little bit, right? You get to the middle of the week. I'm seeing the Vegas line. K-State with a slight edge. Vegas thinks K-State is the slight favorite in that matchup this weekend between K-State and Oklahoma State in Manhattan. So that makes me feel a little bit better. The whispers that I'm hearing about seem like, maybe I shouldn't have freaked out quite as much. Although linebacker is still the spot. That is just such a dramatic concern for me, is linebacker in this game. So watch what Oklahoma State's offense is able to do against K-State's very depleted linebacking core. Khalid Duke is going to be out for the first half because of a targeting penalty, which is not going to help there either. So I'm still very worried about that. But some of the other places, it's sounding a little more encouraging on the injury front. But I totally agree with you, and I said it on our podcast. Calico, if you listen to 3Ma, I said it, I believe, on the YouTube on Sunday. Yeah, totally agree. 28-10, that possession is the one that'll haunt you. K-State's up 28-10 at TCU. They have the ball. They get a stop. They have the ball. plus territory, I think, or at least close to midfield, and it went 3 and out. And the third down call was particularly frustrating because it was a quarterback draw with Will Howard, not Adrian Martinez. He's not as adept with his feet, and that was a killer. I think, and now I will give credit to, I believe it was Derek Young, who does the 3-mile pod with me, who said maybe the idea there was he had been told 4 down territory, and they were thinking they get at least half the yardage on 3rd and 10 there on quarterback draw, and then you can go for it. Like, I would understand that. It's a little more understandable to me, but Will Howard was freaking slinging the ball down the field. I wanted to see him cut it loose and continue to let him throw the ball the way he was throwing it and pushing it. And you had TCU just so far back on their heels. And of course, you don't get it. TCU drives down, scores before half. They get it in the second half to start. They score again, and then it's a totally different game. So, yeah, I'm with you. And Oklahoma State went through kind of the same thing, turtling up a little bit, getting too conservative. Even saw, again, I referenced it last week, Oklahoma State's offensive coordinator had the quote after the game because apparently Oklahoma State lets their coordinator speak after the game, which is crazy to me after living in the K-State media world for as long as I did. But he said basically as much, that he thought he got a little bit too conservative there. So you're right. You're right. Repeatable mistake, frustrating. But if K-State can bounce back with a win against Oklahoma State, I'll feel a ton better. And they would still be in position to play themselves into Arlington. So 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time, Calico Willie. That's all we can do, my man. That's all we can do. I understand you taking a breather after that because frankly, I wish I probably could have taken a breather, but your boy here has to talk about it, multiple times a week. So here I am. R-Web, what's up, R-Web? All right, so R-Web wants to talk about the TV numbers. John, Orend and Marchand are media plants. Don't stress the numbers coming from them. That said, it is the same numbers from last week, 400 versus 350 million. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty close. So last week they were saying 400 and $400 million. If you want the breakdown here, I'll just go ahead and dive into it. And I see Distressed Provo Cougar fan, Calico Willie chiming in again. Eric, Joe, I see you guys. I'll get to you in just a second. But since this is kind of the main topic of the video today and R-Web asked about it, I'm going to dive into that for just a moment here. But Andrew Marchand and John Oran doing that podcast. They say the Big 12 is looking at 350 to 360 million for the final total is what they're hearing. Both of them were kind of like, around 350. Last week it was 400. At least that was the number they said the Big 12 was looking for. I think it was framed more in that way last week, that the Big 12 was seeking 400. And now it sounds like a week later they're saying it doesn't sound like the Big 12 is going to get 400 total and all that. Their breakdown was, Marchand's was anyway, that it would be 225 million from ESPN, 135 million from Fox, that would be ish what the Big 12 is looking at here to make up that'd be 360. So that's on the higher end. Direct quote here. I took a direct quote from it. It said maybe going up a little bit, but not getting to 400. That was from Marchand. So there was also a quote that said, I think the sides are apart at the moment, but there's that was last week. I think the sides are apart at the moment, but there's movement. Now they both were saying like, this is close. They continue to say the Big 12 is close. So that's the exciting part on one hand, is it does sound like a deal is getting pretty close. But I do think there is some significance to, 400 versus 350 million. I mean, it's about $5 million per school. And so if we're doing the math here, if it was 400, divide that by 12, you're at 33 million. The Big 12 has currently been paying out 28 million in just these tier 1 and tier 2 TV rights. So 33 million, it's a $5 million increase. I'm trying to think, like 5 divided by 20, that's 25%, close to 20 to 25% increase in terms of what the per school payout would be. I think that's pretty easily sellable. It definitely falls in line with what everybody's been saying publicly, that the Big 12 is going to get more. But all of a sudden, if it is 350 divided by 12, then you're at 29 million per school. The Big 12's been at about 28. So there's not really that much of an increase. I mean, technically it would be a bit of an increase, but it's not anything real substantial. And what they said in the podcast, and I would actually agree with them on, was if that's going to be it. Now, I know what you're saying, R-Web, is don't trust those numbers. They're industry plants. And I understand why you would say that. There is probably reason to take it with a grain of salt a bit. However, if we're going to operate with that number, I don't think that's a number that's enticing anybody to leave the Pac-12. Now, I guess another caveat, and there's a lot of nuance that goes into this, would be the case the whole time for pulling off 4 corner schools has been more about the totality of the package, that at least it would be similar money, perhaps a slight increase for the Big 12, and then you're buying into stability, not having to worry about the wandering eye of Oregon and Washington. You're buying into stability, and you're buying into uniformity within the conference, like everybody being on the same page. Which, side note, I saw John Wilner randomly decided to rank conferences basically by unity or how together they're at right now. And he had the Big 12 and the Pac-12 tied for third. I mean, when we get a report every other week about schools in the Big 10 and Oregon and Washington have been meeting with the Big 10, like, say what you will, no one's interested in the Big 12 schools like that. Okay, fair enough. But nobody is meeting with other leagues. Nobody has met with other leagues in the last 6 months like they have in the Pac-12. To say that the unity is on the same page is kind of a joke, in my humble opinion. But again, I respect Wilner, but I thought it just came across as very propaganda-ish to put it out there like that, and or trolling, trying to stir up some Big 12 engagement. But I understand that game. I know how it goes. But I don't think you can shop. It makes it less appealing to me if it's like, well, all right, $350 million, we're just barely up from where we were at. Even then, take a step back, big picture, it's great considering where we all thought we were at in July of 2021. But it would be mildly disappointing, and I think it makes your job tougher to sell Pac-12 schools on coming. However, another interesting piece of it is one of the things that they went on to say, and this wasn't even Marchand, this was John Oran. He said that the Pac-12 deal is nowhere close to being done, and that the idea would be ESPN, Fox, and Amazon were going to let the Big 12 set the market and kind of go from there and play off what the Big 12 deal is going to be. So that the Pac-12 media partners here may at this point be sitting back and being like, let's see what happens here. Let the Big 12 do theirs. Then we'll settle into the real nitty-gritty with the Pac-12, which in a way is hilarious, because what we were sold for a long time is that one of the advantages the Pac-12 had was the fact that they were going to be able to get to market first. And we got that shoved down our throats by the Pac-12 propaganda machine, that the Big 12 was behind the Pac-12. Pac-12 would go to market first, and that's an advantage. Well, now that is completely and totally flipped, and we don't hear a whole lot about that anymore. I think it's significant that the number has gone down. You can say industry plants, whatever, but these guys do tend to get a lot of things right, or at least close to it. I'm not saying their word is gospel, but that number going down a little bit, or that the Big 12 is not going to be able to get to that $400 million number, bit surprising to me to hear that in tandem with, it seems like this is very close. Just seems like everybody feels like it's an inevitability. It's going to get done. And I just don't know that you're going to be able to sell Pac-12 schools on leaving for that, even if it's more about some of the other stuff than it is the money. Some of that's almost symbolic. It's so close to being basically the same amount of money that they have right now that I wonder how you sell that exactly. But some of it will also depend on, all right, is that, hey, Big 12 goes to market, Pac-12 is really not worth as much as we thought, and they're going to get less than that. And then you have the tangible proof. Maybe it winds up being 25% more than what the Pac-12 is, and you can sell that. So that is still out there as a possibility, even if the number is a little bit lower. And I will also throw this in here. One of the things that was mentioned in this is that Marchand said Amazon does not have a history of overspending. So I think I've said this because I have heard it. I feel like from Pac-12 corners, which I thought was a fair point, that Amazon might overpay for live TV rights like the Pac-12, because all they're really trying to do is just push people to their products and push people to Amazon Prime. They don't care. It's not just a worried about the ratings game like other entities would be in TV. They have kind of different motivation here to get people on board, so they might be willing to overpay. But he just brought up Amazon does not have a history of overpaying. So that kind of made me think, all right, well, maybe the Pac-12 deal really would come in fairly significantly lower after the Big 12 sets the market with this deal. But either way, that's kind of the status report right now based on the latest podcast from these guys. We'll see. We'll see what winds up happening. It does say, one other note here to add is that the Big 12 would be with ESPN and Fox. The Pac-12 would be ESPN and Amazon. There was a mention of bad blood still being there because of USC, UCLA, and Fox being so in bed with the Big 10. Would make sense. And that's kind of been the common thought that Fox would be out of it for a while now. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at on that deal. We shall see. Brett Yormark continues to project an awful lot of confidence, and I'll get into more of that later on, what he said on campus at UCF earlier today. But I don't know. Well, I trust him. I trust in the guy. I trust that he knows what he's doing here. Certainly wanting to make the Big 12 into a bigger brand. And I would get one thing I can assure you, and one thing I've even been told this week by somebody who does have some knowledge, is that this would likely be just like a 4 or 5 year deal, like a medium to short term deal for the Big 12, with the idea being they want to position themselves to be still in front of some of the other leagues when the next round of deals come up. So it's like bet on yourself, get in now, get in front of the Pac-12 now, take your 4 or 5 years, build a league into what it's going to be. If it's going to be like this, which what we're seeing this year is an incredibly entertaining league that people are watching in droves, even on FS1, because there is so much parity and it's so fun, and it's not Texas and Oklahoma that are up at the top of the league dominating. That's what we expect the Big 12 to be moving forward, right? I think this year, that's probably been an underrated talking point about the league this year. It right now is what we talked about when the 4 teams we found out were coming to the Big 12 signed on officially. We said this is going to be a crazy league where every year there's going to be a ton of parity. It'll be deep. A lot of programs that are solid to good, and you're not going to know who's going to dominate the league every year, and it will be wildly entertaining to watch play out. That's what we have this year, folks. That's what we have this year, and the TV numbers continue to be really good. K-State TCU on FS1, 1.5 million. 1.5 million. It made the top 10 of most watched games, and that's on FS1, which is really hard to do a big number there. The Gambling Gauchos. Shout out to my guy, Gambling Gauchos. So K-State TCU is a great number for FS1. The remaining Big 12 has now put 3 games on FS1 this season with more viewers than any Saturday game between remaining Pac-12 schools on FS1 in the last 5 years. So the Big 12 has more highly rated FS1 games this year than the Pac-12 has in the last 5 years on FS1, just if you want a little bit of context there. So that's because this league is very entertaining. People are noticing. Stuart Mandel of all people. Let me read you a little tweet from Stuart Mandel. Mandel put out the numbers of the top 10 watch games over this past weekend and said, couple notable things here. One of them is about the ACC. And then he says that K-State TCU number is big for an FS1 game. People are catching on to how fun the Big 12 is this year. Last year, fun league, great title game with college football playoff implications. People watched. Over 4 million people watched that thing. This year, zany league, fun, lots of teams up at the top beating up on each other, very deep. You don't really know what's happening. Crazy things happening in games. People are turning out even on FS1 to go watch the league. So a lot of good things happening, and it bodes very well, I think, for the future. And I'm sure that that's something Brett Yormark is keenly aware of. Okay, getting back into the donations. If you guys have them, it's the one way you can guarantee yourself getting on this chat. I will read what you throw in here. If you donate, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you get in touch, make your voice heard, and support the work I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content week in, week out. I could not do it without the help of you guys who are so generous as to donate. So I appreciate it as always. All right, distressed Provo Cougar fan. Boy, distressed Provo Cougar fan. I feel for you, man. I see the picture as the BYU logo upside down. God, it's hitting me in the feels, man. It's hitting me in the feels. I'm sorry. Distressed Provo Cougar fan says BYU is a ship without a rudder, sailing into a Friday night storm and being chased by pirates. I didn't realize that game was on Friday night. For some reason, that makes me feel worse about BYU's chances there. I was having a debate about this on actually my podcast, where somebody, was it Cole or Derek? One of the two picked as their lock of the week BYU in a bounce back spot against ECU. And I thought, man, I mean, I'm further away from it than you are, distressed Provo Cougar fan or BYU fans on here, but I get to feel, it feels to me just, I mean, it's 3 straight losses at this point, getting blown out by Liberty, giving up all the points they did. No answers really defensively right now. East Carolina hot with the win over UCF. I don't know. It feels to me like the BYU season could be totally coming off the rails here, unless you're going to say, well, John, it already has. All right, fair enough. But it feels like that to me is where it's headed. So I feel for you, distressed Provo Cougar fan. There will be better days ahead. I promise you that. You guys have too many resources, too proud of a program, too much history and tradition for this to be a real permanent thing. But right now, it is rough. It is rough. And East Carolina, like I said, I think they're pretty stingy, pretty tough this year. So I worry about that one for BYU, but I've also been wrong on BYU at about every turn this year. I should also mention that. So there is your silver lining in all this. I've been an idiot. I've had no feel, no read accurately anyway on BYU this year. So that should make you feel better. There you go. I'm all about the people. I'm giving the people some hope here on the show tonight. Ema Tom, what's up, Ema Tom? Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Appreciate your donation. Ema Tom says Cats versus Blue Wings Rising last week of the season. K-State playing for Arlington, KU playing for a bowl. Cats crushed the Hawks 45-14. Go State. I love that. Couple notes. I think Kansas will get somebody before then. I do not think they'll be going into the last week of the season playing for bowl eligibility. They're still, even if it's somebody that jumps out in front of them. The last 2 weeks, it's like Oklahoma and Baylor should have both probably put Kansas to bed by 28 points. And instead, they're having to pretty feistily defend things in the fourth quarter at the end of the game because Kansas is right there. They're not quitting on anybody. I think that'll jump up and bite somebody here. In K-State playing for Arlington, I certainly hope so. But right now, even though I do feel a little bit better about the injury situation than I did on Sunday, it still isn't enough flux that I'm not confident enough to say right now that will be the case. But that would be a hell of a scenario. And earlier in the year, when both teams were really playing well, I was having flashbacks to good old 1995 K-State, KU, Ema Tom. I hope and trust that you're familiar with that one. It is one of my favorite K-State games of all time. Yes, I was only 6 years old when it happened, but I have watched that highlight tape with Mitch Holthus reading and going over the game, and he did the game on pay-per-view TV back in the day, and hearing those highlights, I've seen it a million times. But Kansas was actually ranked in the top 10. K-State was just outside the top 10. K-State won 41-7, I believe was the final score of that game. Just clobbered the Hawks. And that is one of my favorite games of all time. With all the hype, Kansas being in the top 10 and K-State taking them behind the woodshed, Bill Snyder getting the best of them. So it gives me those sort of vibes. Ema Tom. Let's hope that the same sort of thing is in store this year. Eric, I see Eric. Eric, I took a peek at this one earlier, and I saw what you said, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. But see, this is the thing. I feel like there's a lot of respect between K-State and Oklahoma State, much like with K-State Tech. So there's not really like a lot of hate to go around or real back and forth here. But Eric says, I love you, John, but it's going to be a weekend of heartbreak for you. Go Pokes. Well, Eric, if it makes you feel any better, on the podcast, I officially picked Oklahoma State to win 27-24. So I am predicting heartbreak for myself this weekend. I am predicting that there will be heartbreak for me. I think the world of the Pokes, even though this may not be the most talented team Mike Gundy's ever had, but I think the world of their toughness and bouncing back not only from just a gut-wrenching loss at TCU, but bouncing back from a game early on that felt like Texas completely controlled and beat up, down, 6 starters, I think it was, for Oklahoma State on Saturday. Spencer Sanders beat up with the shoulder, didn't matter, came back and won the game. Nothing but admiration for your Pokes. So I've got no real smack talk. Like, Oklahoma State is the program that I truly envy in the Big 12 and wish that K-State was. Like, I feel like K-State is about, maybe like a notch below Oklahoma State, notch or two below Oklahoma State. That's what I'd really like to get back to. I think what Gundy's program is like a notch and a half below what Bill Snyder was in 1.0, like Snyder 1.0 when he was winning 11 games, 6 out of 7 years from 97 to 03. It's like a step down from that, but a step or two up from where K-State's at right now. So I would love to get back up to that level where Oklahoma State is at. Calico Willie says, good to hear, John. You looked upset on Fremont. Yeah, I was in a bad place, man. I was in a bad place because it just felt like, I said it then and I'll say it now. It felt to me kind of like, because of the injuries on Saturday at TCU, K-State lost multiple games. A fairly thin roster. And that's a part of it. Everybody's hurt. Everybody in the league is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. Everybody is in the same boat, and that's a part of building a team and building a program, is that you have to have depth. So I get that, but it was just like, God, there's so many high-end players on this roster. 5 first-team All Big 12 preseason players on this roster, and then you have other guys like Josh Hayes who have come in out of nowhere. and are playing at that level right now. Adrian Martinez also, and it's like just people dropping like flies, but there's so much high-end talent. I'm like, God, this team absolutely can win a Big 12 championship, but if they get hit with bad injury luck, it's probably not going to happen, and that had me in a pretty low spot. Joe, what's up, Joe? All right, someone else coming in like our web. Joe says, and I appreciate the support, Joe. Thank you for being here. Joe says, I would be leery of what these people like Marchand say. They have an agenda. To be honest, I'm not familiar enough with like the overall scope. Like, I don't follow Marchand and Oran unless there is something college sports related that's really popping up on my radar, or a show that I like. Like, I can remember Marchand having some reports on Dan Le Batard show news, which I haven't listened to Le Batard as much lately, but at a point was very, very into that show. So I do know that they've gotten some things right. I'm sure everybody does have somewhat of an agenda, even if it's not totally intentional. But I do have a certain level of trust with them. And it's at least noteworthy to me that the thought last week was, here's the number the Big 12 has. And now they're coming back and saying, doesn't sound like the Big 12 is going to get there. So I think look, I understand how you could say, all right, they're going to float that to try, it's a negotiating tactic and trying to, okay, I get it. Even if it's not their agenda, maybe it's ESPN's agenda or Fox's agenda, whoever. Totally fair to bring up and take it with a grain of salt if you want, but they are respected enough that it deems to me worthy of putting out here. This is not random Twitter account with 7 numbers behind, the name that's got a little egg as the profile picture, right? We're a step, we're significantly above that with Marchand and Oran. So take it with a grain of salt if you want. Yes, definitely do that. I'll wait until I see what the actual deal is going to be. Again, I'd be kind of surprised if the deal was done early instead of waiting 16 months just to be at $350 million and have it barely be an increase. But I also don't really know what the landscape is. So, okay. Fair enough point, Joe. Fair enough point. Appreciate you, my man. Zach hopping in here again. Zach says, which future Big 12 Cougar team do you think will finish the season stronger? 4-3 Houston or 4-4 BYU? Will both of them reach a bowl or reach 7 wins? Damn, that is a good question. Let me pull up the schedules. I've looked at BYU's recently. Houston. I'm not very familiar with what Houston has left. I will be honest with you. My inclination without looking at the schedules was to say Houston. That's really just because of the direction of their season's trending in the opposite of what BYU's is. BYU 3 straight losses, getting progressively worse. The defense, in particular, getting progressively worse. They have East Carolina, at Boise, Utah Tech, and at Stanford. So they're going to beat Utah Tech. I feel pretty confident in saying that. You've got home games against, a home game against East Carolina and road trips to Boise and Stanford. All 3 of those are losable for sure. I think they can get 1 out of that. I would guess that BYU, if I were to predict, I'd say BYU 6-6. Houston's 4-3. They've got South Florida. That should be a win. At SMU, certainly very winnable. At East Carolina will be tricky. Tulsa can be tricky. Temple, I don't think will be much of an issue. Yeah, I think Houston gets to 7. I would put Houston at 7-5 and BYU at 6-6. So I guess the answer there is a slight lean to Houston, if I were just doing that off the top of my head. Yeah, that's where I go with that. See, Alan says, I've got pie in my face. Well, I don't know about that, Alan, but hey, I'm glad you're here. If that's the whole idea, I've got pie on my face right now. I'm glad you're here. I see your name in the chat a lot, so you hang out and watch these chats, even if you think I'm just out here throwing stuff around and getting pie on my face. So I appreciate that. Joe, what's up, Joe? Coming back in here, Joe. Joe says the $400 million would include the inflation that you have to include in the future. The people who are associated with Fox will be negative against conferences not called the Big Ten. I thought Fox, the whole idea here was like Yormark is pretty tight with Kevin Warren. I think the Big 12 has ESPN is the one I would be more worried about in terms of their relationship with the Big 12 because of the tortious interference claims from Bob Bowlesby last year. I would think Fox would not be as motivated to try to come against the Big 12, but I could be wrong. And again, negotiating tactics, whatever. If they're trying to work an angle there, I can understand that. I just would not be inclined to say that Fox is going to be like anti Big 12 for the sake of them just not being a conference named the Big 10. I can understand how there'd be bad blood again between the Pac-12 and Fox right now, but it was also like ESPN with the big SEC contract. Like ESPN was the one heavily involved in all the Big 12 stuff, not Fox. So I don't quite see that there. But that doesn't mean that your point overall is not valid. It certainly does not mean that. But I appreciate the thoughts, Joe. I definitely do. And R Web, I see R Web coming back in here. R Web, thank you for the support again. R Web says, I'm not saying they're lying, just that they have a slant based upon connections, just as the pro Big 12 and Pac-12 media. Totally agree. Totally agree with that. Like, look, everybody does kind of have an angle and have a little bit of a slant to it. And I would not deny that for a second. You know, I mean, back to Alan saying pie on my face, whatever. I mean, look, yeah, clearly here, you come here for a Big 12 slant on things. And I've been open about that since day one. I mean, once this channel started blowing up, I was like, look, I mean, I'm trying to give the Big 12 a voice. Like this is, you come here. Remember those days? Trying to give the Big 12 a voice. You come here for Big 12 slanted things, how things look through a Big 12 lens. If you want the Pac-12 slant, the Pac-12 lens, there's a pretty easy avenue for you to go get that. And then, yes, those in the media reporting industry, like reporting on sports media, they're going to have a different slant. They're going to have a, you know, agenda. Agenda is a thing. Like agenda to me feels like a pretty strong word. I wouldn't think like Marchand and Orand have so much of an agenda as they do just some of their sources might have an agenda. So, you know, how much of stuff getting filtered through, those sorts of things. Our web, believe me, I know that you're not suggesting that they're lying or that these are totally off or that it's wrong to bring them up and discuss them. I totally get that. Totally get that. There are no hard feelings here at all. As far as that goes. And I welcome the pushback. Like I welcome the pushback, and I would love for this to be wrong in the Big 12 to come around and, you know, Brett Yormark flops down $450 million on the table. Would love for that to happen. But when these guys start throwing out numbers like that, I doubt that the numbers would be drastically different from what they're saying, I guess is kind of the point there. But I definitely appreciate all the feedback from you guys. I definitely do. Ronnie, what's up, Ronnie? Ronnie, I just see a pretty sweet sticker with a guy with, what do you call those things? The little shaker things, maracas, just dancing around, having a good time. So I appreciate that, Ronnie. I'm not seeing any question or comment. Oh, there we go. Ronnie says, keep up the great work. Go Raiders. All right. I got it, Ronnie. Right above it. My man, Ronnie. Give you another one of these. I had a GIF made of me doing that where that was thrown back in my face when K-State played Tech. That's okay. I'll give you that, Ronnie. I appreciate the support. Shout out to the Cactus Mafia. Definitely shout out to the Cactus Mafia. Really interested in that game, by the way, this weekend. Texas Tech Baylor. Is Texas Tech really ready to make a second half surge? That's kind of what that game's all about to me. Is Texas Tech really going to be serious about making a big time push in the second half of the season? I know Tech fans feel like it. Hell, I really feel like it in watching them. I said last week, I want no part of playing them right now. West Virginia certainly doesn't after coming out of that game. But this is a game you got to get. You know, if you're going to go do that, make a run at competing for the Big 12 championship this year, trying to get to Arlington, at least just really set yourself up with some great momentum, like maybe get to the 8-win mark this year. This is a game you got to have. Got to have this one against Baylor. So very, very much intrigued by that and what the Red Raiders have in store on Saturday. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Boom to the Sooner. Does the Iowa State OU loser make a bowl? I think if Iowa State loses, they definitely don't. If Oklahoma loses, I think there's still a better shot of it. And frankly, like it's a tough spot for Oklahoma. That's another really intriguing game. I know the line was somebody by one. I'm not even remembering who it was right now. I apologize. I'm sure somebody's screaming it right now at their computer. But that's a really tough game to peg. Like Iowa State has played everybody close. They've got the 4 Big 12 losses by a combined 14 points. I feel like we all know that stat that's been repeated ad nauseum by this point. So you got Iowa State, especially at home, being really tricky to take down. They're going to ugly the game up. Their defense is going to slow you down. And their offense did seem to get a little bit better last time we saw them against Texas. And if Xavier Hutchinson doesn't drop that last touchdown pass, I mean, it seems even better than it was. But Iowa State definitely, I feel like they drop another one, it's just going to get too hard. And at a certain point, even if they're close losses, you kind of are what you are, and you don't have enough this year to really get over that hump. Oklahoma, I feel like, still has enough talent on the roster that they could drop what would be a reasonable game to drop and still find a way to get it done. So not a total bowl elimination game, but close to it. Definitely close to it. Alan, what's up, Alan? Shout out to my guy, Alan. Thank you for the support. Alan says, hi, John. If the number is really only $350 million, wouldn't Yormark simply wait it out? And which fraternity at K-State? Acacia at KU, Rock Jock Jayhawk Allen. Which fraternity at K-State? That was Delta Sigma Phi. I am a Delta Sigma Phi alum. So Yitbos to all you D-Sigs out there. It's been a minute. I'm excited to get back and see the old place. Right next to City Park in Manhattan. If the number is really only $350 million, wouldn't Yormark simply wait it out? See, I would tend to think so. Which, if we're being skeptical about what Oran and Marchand are saying right now, that would be one thing I would say as some skepticism. It would be like, all right, I mean, if that's really the number, is it really that close? Is the deal really going to happen? Is it public pressure? Is that the idea here from ESPN and Fox leaking numbers and info to these guys, trying to get them to agree to that? If like, hey, we tell these guys to say the numbers are out there, a deal is close, that Yormark will feel some sense of pressure to get it done, as opposed to if he doesn't, then there's going to be a sense of disappointment from Big 12 fans, administrators, whatever, internally, that a deal was not done at this point in time. Like maybe so. And I do think if that really is the number, that would be my knee-jerk reaction. Like, man, wouldn't you just wait it out? But I think some of it is, I think a calculation to take into consideration here is if you get it done now, you get it done early, and you make it like a 4-year deal, you could still come back to market again and be in front of your competition potentially there, be in front of these other leagues, and have a little bit of basically just going like a short-term thing to show people over 4 years. This league can be really, really fun and really exciting like it is right now and still produce great TV ratings. And then people would be a little bit more bought in. That I think would kind of be the idea there, because once again, I didn't give you all the context on these TV numbers from earlier. Texas, Oklahoma State did 4.5 million, 2:30 on ABC. Huge network, huge time slot, great game. Obviously involved a big brand in Texas. K-State, TCU, 1.5 million on FS1. KU Baylor was 744K. ESPN 2 at 11, and then West Virginia Tech did 542K at 3 o'clock on FS1. But this is the third straight week that a Big 12 game on FS1 involving neither Oklahoma or Texas got over 1.1 million viewers. No OU in Texas, 3 straight weeks, a Big 12 game between remaining 8 teams does over 1 million in viewers. K-State at TCU, 1.53. Baylor at West Virginia, 1.15. Kansas, TCU at Kansas, 131, and Tech at Oklahoma State, 163. Adam Lunt also added those are the 3 highest rated games on FS1 all year. That includes 2 games involving Nebraska and 1 involving Texas. So that just shows you how competitive the Big 12 has been with TV ratings this year. If you give it 4 years of that, and people are still hanging around looking at this and saying, man, damn, like this league's pretty fun, and people are going to tune in and watch this, then if you have the deal done now, even if you're taking a little bit less now, I think the idea would be first to market with the next deal, get a chance to prove yourself a little bit, and then that number is going to go way up with the next deal. So it might be a matter of timing and why you would sacrifice some money in the short term on that end. I'm really doing a lot of work, I think, just sussing this out as I talk it out and seeing all the possibilities here, because it is pretty fascinating there. So Alan, appreciate you. Michael. Whew, okay. I like this, Michael. Michael says I may be optimistic. BYU wins out. Hashtag go Cougs. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. I would say every game left on BYU's schedule is winnable and losable. The problem with that is when you've lost 3 straight and the momentum is not going in the right direction, it's just hard to see BYU putting together that consistent of an effort for 3 of the 4 games. I mean, they can show up and beat Utah Tech, but East Carolina, Boise, and Stanford, those will be tricky. But I like the optimism. You're better at that than I am, Michael. I'll tell you that much, because you guys saw, man, I was down pretty bad earlier this week. So you're much, much, much better at that than I am. Don, what's up, Don? My man, Don, thank you so much. Incredible support. Always appreciate it. You're far too generous. But I really, really appreciate it, and it helps a lot in me bringing you Big 12 content week in and week out. So, Don, thank you so much. Don says, looking for a better week. Go Cats, beat the Pokes. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Don. Sincerely appreciate it. Not just the financial support, but the kind words there and the support that you give the channel regularly. Much, much, much appreciate that. I was looking here. Yeah, it is Don. I was just double checking. I'm like, Don's my man that hooked me up with some tickets too. Like, Don's a great dude. You guys should all be very, very nice to Don here in the chat because he is excellent to me and therefore you as well. So thank you, Don. We're gonna I was about to say we're gonna get it done. I mean, I picked Oklahoma State to win, but I'm feeling more optimistic. I think it's gonna be a great game. I think it'll be a great atmosphere, the best atmosphere we've seen at Bill Snyder Family Stadium in years, and I'm very much excited to be there for that. So bringing it back around with the optimism, Don. Bringing it back around. Nick, and on the heels of that, Nick, one of our best Oklahoma State fans here that I hear from regularly. I appreciate you, Nick, as always. Nick says, no question, just appreciate the work you do. Wishing for a good injury-free, all caps. Thank you for emphasizing that. Wishing for a good injury-free game between the Cowboys and Wildcats on Saturday. Go Pokes and go Big 12. Yeah, Nick, for both of our sakes, man, for both of our sakes for the rest of the season, give us an injury-free game on Saturday. No injuries for the Cowboys or the Wildcats. Oklahoma State down like 6 starters last week. Spencer Sanders has been a game-time decision. K-State, I mean, Deuce Vaughn in and out of the locker room. Felix Anudike-Uzomah in and out of the locker room. 2 All-Americans there that have been limited. Anudike-Uzomah, I guess, not in the locker room, but he's been limited in terms of how much he can play. K-State was down to its 3rd-string quarterback against TCU. Both guys are banged up. We'll see who actually winds up out there on the field on Saturday. You've got all Big 12 linebacker Daniel Green hurt for K-State. Josh Hayes playing like an all Big 12 safety. He was out. Julius Brents, all Big 12 corner. He's been dealing with injuries and missed some time on Saturday. We'll see if he's able to go this upcoming Saturday. So, I mean, it's a freaking laundry list. It's a freaking laundry list at this time. Tight end, Ben Sinnott at the end of the game. He gets hurt too for K-State. Starting tight end / H-back was really important to the offense. So, yeah, there's too much of that going on for our 2 squads right now. We are definitely leading the way, carrying the flag for Big 12 injuries right now. So, yeah. Anyway, Nick, it should be a great game. Nick, if you're going to be there by chance, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. If you're going to be there at the game, would love to buy you a beer or something. But it should be a good one. It should definitely be a good one. Michael says, Allen getting a $350. Thank you for the support, by the way, Michael. Says, Allen getting a $350 million deal now gives leverage later. Squeeze the money pot so there's less for the Pac-12 now. In 4 or 5 years, see if you can expand. Yeah, it's kind of the same idea of what I was saying there and what we've heard about nothing being close at all. Right now on the Pac-12 front, as far as the TV deal is concerned, that would fall in line with that. Like you're trying to put more pressure on the Pac-12 to get something done when there's going to be less inventory. You're taking some of that inventory from ESPN. If there's going to be ESPN overlap there, take some of the ESPN inventory that would be available, snatch that up for yourself, take some money now, bet on yourself, make it back later. I think that would be the general philosophy there. Jeff, what's up, Jeff? Thank you for the donation. Jeff says, if Don can spring 100, I can spring 10. Thanks for the content. Jeff, far too kind. Thank you, sir. And thank you for Don spurring on a little bit of extra there. You guys are great. Sincerely appreciate it. I do have to pinch myself sometimes that I'm able to do this because of the support that you guys give me. And I do truly mean that. So thank you, everybody. Even if you're just here in the chat and you hang out and you like the video, which, hey, like the video, guys. Please like the video. I appreciate that. It's just been really cool to see, and I love getting on here and talking Big 12 football with you guys week in and week out, man. Oh, do we have some bots? Damn, I see people complaining about bots. Hang on. Let's get rid of this bot. Any of you guys interested in 69 girls XYZ? Yeah, I think we're gonna put that user in timeout. We're gonna put that user in timeout. We got rid of the bots. So thank you guys for calling that out. Oh, Bud, what's up, Bud? Bud says, with that black shirt, you are dressed for the blackout Saturday night in Lubbock, Wreckham, Lubbock Guest House. Bud, thank you for being here. If you're going to Lubbock at any point, football game or not, make sure you check out LubbockGuesthouse.com. Bud's got the hook up there if you need a place to stay. Bud, thank you for being so kind as always, my friend. Blackout Saturday sounds pretty damn fun in Lubbock with Baylor in town, Tech playing the way they are, fans fired up, momentum from last week, Baron Morton out there slinging it like a future star. Well, kind of a star now, but certainly a future star. I'm sure Lubbock is going to be freaking lit on Saturday. That is a place I'm going to be real happy in Manhattan, but I would also have a blast being in Lubbock this weekend for that game. So, yeah, I'm with you, bud. That would be fun. And hey, if it were at all feasible, it'd be super fun to be there for that game. That'd be a cool thing, you know. Maybe if we get to the point a few years where this operation's really up and humming, maybe I can just start like going on site, go to a Big 12 game every single week. We can do our own, you know, screw college game day. We don't need college game day every single week. We can just do John Kurtz game day. Huh? Sound all right? Go to set up shop at a Big 12 game every week. I saw Josh Pate from 24/7 Sports. He's coming to Manhattan this weekend. So, you know, he does his own little road show. Maybe we can get to that point at some point. Maybe we'll do it live from the Lubbock Guest House. How about that? John Kurtz game day live from the Lubbock Guest House. I love it. Thank you, bud. Thank you for the support. Much, much, much appreciated. And thank you for all you guys being here tonight. The Yates 27. This is an interesting one. The Yates 27 says Hugh Freeze to West Virginia. Anyone but Neil Brown. You know, I've seen that a couple times now. That must be a popular name going around in West Virginia circles right now, Hugh Freeze. Guy's got some issues in his past, but certainly can coach football. I mean, he can coach football, and I think that's being proven by what he's doing at Liberty right now. BYU fans definitely are aware of that. I think from a football standpoint, that seems like it'd be a pretty good fit, and that's the type of candidate that, like, if you're really trying to win, that's a dude you could go get. It's definitely a dude you could go get that I think would win you some football games. I completely understand. Yeah, I see Nick saying Freeze can coach. There's no doubt. There's no doubt Hugh Freeze can coach football. You know, can he do it without getting in a bunch of NCAA trouble? And is he a decent person? You know, I mean, that might be up for debate, but he can certainly coach. I feel like there's no way Neil Brown survives this, right? What's the word in Morgantown right now about that? Is there any way Neil Brown winds up surviving this season? I guess this week I did have in my notes about the West Virginia game here. What was my take on West Virginia? I was like, yeah, like if you're going to save the job, you know, it felt like Baylor was a spot where Neil Brown bought himself a little bit of extra time, like kept those hopes on life support. Man, beat TCU. All of a sudden, maybe it becomes pretty hard to fire the guy if he's able to beat TCU at home, which, I mean, that line is only like at a touch. I think it was like, I don't know if there was a hook on it. I feel like it was only -7. You know, it's not super high. And TCU has been, speaking of super high, riding a super high for the last, 3 weeks. You had College game day in Kansas, and then you had 3 games anyway. College game day in Kansas. Then you have Oklahoma State double overtime, thrilling comeback victory. Then you have 18-point night game home comeback against K-State in a game that 1.5 million people watched on FS1 because it was one of the best games of the week. Now you're going on the road to Morgantown, fairly tricky place to play. Not an opponent that, based on the results of this year, is going to have you like quote unquote up just based on who they are. That does seem like a spot where I would say like watch out. At least like watch out a little bit. That could be tricky, but so much of that to me will depend on whether or not West Virginia has like mailed it in. Like, are they still going to be okay? Are they still motivated? Are they still playing for Neil Brown? Where is that actually at? That to me would be the big question there. Plus, in this semi-charmed kind of life that the Horned Frogs are living right now, West Virginia running back Tony Mathis is going to be out for the game. I did see that come across my Twitter timeline and was just like, all right, curse of the Hypnotoad continues. I mean, TCU flips over to the Hypnotoad and just everybody's getting hurt playing TCU. And now you got guys before the game being ruled out that are key players for West Virginia. It's like, man, I don't know what TCU did to the football gods. I guess it's, the 4 or 5 years here of rolling in relative mediocrity in football now getting paid back. But a lot of luck And look, I'm not saying that is TCU should not apologize for that. You're going to have some years like that. You're going to have other years where everything goes against you. And I think most of that kind of evens out in the end. So I'm not trying to say that as like a takedown of TCU, but they are taking advantage of what's being put in front of them, which has been some decent injury luck this year. No doubt about that. Okay, this is about your 3 to 5 minute warning. I've got a couple of notes from Brett Yormark in the press conference that he did. Not only the press conference he did at UCF, I did forget there was another quote I saw from an interview that he did recently that was intriguing to me. So I will get into that here. But if you have something real quick, hit me with it right now. You can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. If you want to ensure that that gets in here, you can also, if you're watching after the fact, hit me up on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo as well. But I thought this was interesting. Okay, so Brett Yormark, to me, this felt like this was like a response to some of the Pac-12 criticism that's come his way, like the John Canzano piece that we talked about recently. It was kind of insinuating that, you know, he's kind of a sleazy sales guy and there may not be as much substance to back up some of the words that he's throwing out there. And this was a quote from Yormark where he's doing this interview and he says, "It's an interesting thing in this industry. You get scrutinized if you wake up one morning and take 2 teams from another conference. I'm going to be very transparent about my desires to go national." He would go on to say, "I've telegraphed my intentions and desires to go national and expand." He said, "I aspire for this conference to be truly national. And from a geographic standpoint, we need to have institutions spread out across the country from east to west." Continues to stress, got to be additive and create value if you're going to add somebody. But he also said, "I found an incredible camaraderie right now. And we all share the same vision for where we want this conference to go," which again would be national. But I think the part here where he's saying, like, he was stressing, look, I've telegraphed my intentions. I'm telling you what I want to do. To me, that's like, look, Cleve Cobb, you're not very public with what you're saying. Kevin Warren in the Big Ten, he did this alliance with you and then went and stabbed you behind your back. Like, there are a lot of people who will say one thing and turn around and do the other thing. And this is a real dog eat dog, like cutthroat world in the world of conference realignment. He's saying, I'm just telling you up front, I know the game I'm playing. I know what world I'm in. It's a very cutthroat world. And I'm telling you, I will make shrewd moves if they're going to help my league. If it's going to help what I am in charge of, I will do it. And there's, to me, some nobility in that. Like, just being like, look, you guys are all sitting around here freaking out about what might happen, or is someone going to do that? He said, look, this is what we'll do. If we can add, we'll add. And I think there's some nobility in that. And, you know, it kind of makes him come across a little bit more trustworthy to me in a way where it's like, yeah, okay, you may think like sales guy and there's some sleaziness to that. And I get some concern from some folks who would say, is this eventually, like, is he going to make too many moves that take the Big 12 away from what it actually is because he's this like slick East Coast guy? Like, I can understand having a little bit of concern there, but at least here, like, he's being transparent about it instead of, you know, what would you rather have? Somebody be straight up with you and be like, here's how it's going to be. You may not like all of it, but this is how I'm going to be. You'll deal with X, Y, and Z. Or somebody who comes in, preaches a big game and is like, hey, it'll be great. We're going to have a great relationship. And then behind your back is going and doing things that are going to make you mad. You'd rather have the transparent guy. And so I don't know. I appreciated that a lot from Yormark. I really did. One thing, so he's talking a lot about going national. One of the things that stood out to me about his press conference at UCF today, he said international. And this was a question about Orlando. He was asked about something to the effect of like, how can you leverage Orlando in the state of Florida for the league? And he said, like, Orlando is an international hub. We aspire to go international. We aspire to go international. It's like, man, Brett Yormark trying, you know, we've been talking about the Jay-Z connections. Now he's trying to be Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide here, taking the Big 12 global. Can you imagine that? Like, get like an Oklahoma State jersey on a kid in England, like London, you know, in a nice London pub rocking for the Iowa State for Farmageddon, like, you know, a London pub watching Farmageddon. Can you imagine? Brett Yormark trying to take this thing international. I don't know how feasible that actually is. We'll see. That's very aspirational. If we could start with national and, you know, a really nice TV deal and then work our way to the international, I'd be just fine with that. Be happy with that. But very, very aspirational stuff from Yormark there. I see Nick brings up games in China again. Well, I know that they did. I mean, back in the day, it was the Tokyo Tokyo Bowl. They call it it was the Coca-Cola Bowl in Tokyo. K-State played there one year against Nebraska. It was 1991 or 90. Very early 90s. I know Oklahoma State. I saw clips circulating on Twitter the other day of Oklahoma State and Texas Tech playing one of those games way back in the day. I think Barry Sanders was involved in that game, if I recall correctly. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Either way, it's happened before. So, yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, Yormark continues to talk about, one thing you'll hear him talk about a lot is taking Big 12 events across the country, creating new events, finding ways to have things. So that, again, is I think why people speculate the Big 12 basketball tournament would move from Kansas City, which I do hate. But he is clearly trying to take the Big 12 to different places here. And if you're going to shoot for the stars, land in the moon, whatever the old saying is, like I'm cool with that. If the idea is international and it winds up just being national, that'd be great for the league. And I think you need somebody with big thinking like that. And Yormark certainly is not somebody who thinks small. He's not somebody who thinks small at all. So anyway, little update on what Yormark is thinking. I think that's going to do it for me. Talked out. I'm exhausted. Been a long day of talking to a lot of folks, but it's been really fun. Thank you guys for being here, being lively tonight. Much appreciate you as always. Spread the word, family, friends, social media, word of mouth, wherever you can get the word out about the channel. Continue to do so. I appreciate the hell out of it, all you guys that do. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight. Hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. If you have something for me, I'm generally pretty responsive in the DMs there. Definitely try to be anyway. So that's a good way to get in contact with me. Outside of that, you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy college football Saturday. And hopefully I'm not in the sunken place like I was this past Sunday when I talked to you next. So anyway, take care, and I will see you guys soon.